Welcome back once more, ladies and gentlemen, to the ESL Katowice Royale, and things are certainly starting to heat up in the building. All of our duos are fighting out at the moment, and we're coming down to our last 5 games. It really is getting close to lifting those trophies. But before we do that, we're having some really interesting battles towards the end game at the moment. A lot of duos getting involved, and we asked the duos if we could pick 2 other players to go up against and fight in that end zone, who would it be? Let's find out.
Kuna Mitra.
Yeah, Kuna Mitra.
Doesn't really matter because it's super stacked. Like everyone's pretty is really good. So I don't know. I couldn't think of a duo that's like stands out that are like okay, we line on these guys.
Don't want to have Mitro like Bizzle and Demo up there.
Yeah.
Maybe like a new duo or like a duo that hasn't played together a lot.
Probably the worst duo possible, right? Because it's an easy win.
Oh, to be honest, I honestly don't mind who it is. It wouldn't change anything, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of top quality players in this, so should be good fun.
If it was me, I would probably want my revenge against Kites.
미스워치 TSM
Mitro Kuna, alternative.
Zeke and Saf, because they're known as a really good duo. I'll bomb off them.
Very interesting stuff, gentlemen. Some people being very respectful, saying, you know, there's a lot of good players in this tournament. Some players are looking for a bit of revenge on a few duos they might have had some previous encounters with.
I'd want you and Stress with me and Speedy. Yeah, because I feel like I wouldn't have to do anything, and Speedy would be able to take you guys on 1v2. Right, Speedy?
You know, I think Stress would give us a little bit of a fight for our money.
Really?
Easy clips.
But not this guy. Not this guy.
Easy, easy. Anyway, let's talk about what we've got coming up, because things are really starting to hot up, like I mentioned before. Round number 10 just around the corner now, gentlemen. And now is the time for change, I feel, for a lot of these duos. We're seeing people being contested on their favorite drops. We're seeing battles being lost on those drops. Speedy, looking ahead to these games, this has to be the time for change, right?
Look, Vinny and Zexro have not adapted too well to Game 1 and Game 2. Game 1, they were in shambles going into the endgame, and they only made it into endgame because the zone was right there. Game 2, they didn't even make it to mid-game. They got contested by Faxfox and Aim Hero over and over, and they need to reevaluate their strategy or else they risk losing the tournament.
They didn't make it to mid-game. Hell, they didn't even make it to early game. Like, they got out of the battle bus, landed, they were instantly in a fight. So getting knocked out with 0 points on the board is the worst case for them when you're number 1, or at least were number 1 on the standings. They have to change things up. And as Ball was saying before, they should have did it last night. And it's strategy. Teams are going to be gunning for you. You have to try to fight to stay alive. You have to keep people guessing. And if you constantly switch around your spots, no one will know where you're going to be. You'll have more of a safer start, more of a start that you're happy with.
Absolutely. In a game like this, you need a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, all the way to Z if you want to make sure that you put yourself in the best position possible when things go wrong.
And I think it's a great point as well, is maybe this is something we're really seeing develop to such a depth, should we say, because of the longer format we have here. We have 14 rounds now. Well, all of a sudden, if it was 7 rounds, maybe some of these players wouldn't be contesting in those 7 rounds. They kind of see how things are going and play their normal game. But because they do have the opportunity to get involved in some battles and win some points and take points off of other players, as we can see the duo stand-ins here, that's going to make it even more interesting and more likely for these things to happen.
So the upside to Vinny and Zextro being eliminated so early, I think Speedy is the fact, and Bala said it before at the end of the last game, is that a lot of the other top duos got eliminated earlier on as well. They didn't, not as early as they did, but they weren't able to capitalize and close that gap as massively as we would expect, or maybe overpass them. 20-point difference, it's not bad. It's still a lead, right? But it's not the 91 points they had yesterday.
The only reason, you know, Vinny and Zexro are still number 1 is because they accrued a massive lead yesterday. But like you said, a lot of the top point leaders are also getting suppressed.
Yeah, so you really have to figure things out here, and I completely agree. Like, it's a strategy of the tournament. It's a strategy. You have to adapt your play style over the course of the tournament. You have to drop somewhere else, and I hope we're going to actually tag along with them to see if they do go the same place or not.
And it's what the players have been talking about this whole time, is one of the strongest things they look for in a teammate or themselves is the ability to adapt. It's not only Season 8 that these guys have had to adapt to over the last few days. Now we're seeing a mentality shift in a lot of players who are getting more aggressive, who are changing things up. How difficult is that to do, though, Speedy, to adapt on the fly in-game? I mean, coming into today, Vinny and Zexro maybe not expecting to be challenged as hotly as they are. I mean, questionably, we should say, but now that they are, how difficult is it now to think, okay, what do we do? Is it a case of having that plan, or is it a case of just playing reactively now?
So players had an entire night to develop a new strategy, but you know, Vinny and Zexro, they stuck to the same strategy. They have about 10-minute breaks in between games in order to reevaluate and talk to each other. That's not a lot of time, but that's why you should have talked last night about what to do for Plan B.
See, I think it's actually easy to do. I'm gonna go a different route here, just for the idea of, not because, you know, the players or anything like that, but Fortnite to me is a game about improvisation. You're never gonna have the same fight every game. You're never gonna see the same fight twice unless you play about 300,000 hours or something like that. And then you always have to adapt, like mid-game. Like, you're always changing up your style. You can never have that set plan that you follow to a T. You can have a plan. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll do that. But if something happens in between any of those moments, you have to change your plan, right? You have to change things up. And I feel like you have to be able to improv your style and your plan.
And improvisation is obviously one of the characteristics of the best Fortnite players in the world. And speaking of which, we actually asked all of our competitors here in the arena who they thought was the best Fortnite player in the world.
Nitro.
Definitely one of us.
My opinion, in North America, it's definitely Bizzle in 72 Hours. And EU, it's, in my opinion, Savage and Mongrel. And Nitro.
I think Bizzle's #1 right now.
Yeah.
You're looking at him.
Ninja.
No way, Smith.
True. He is the best builder.
For the competitive side, I would definitely say Bizzle. Bizzle, he's on our team too. Goes Fizzle, of course, but no, he's such a consistent player. He does so well in every tournament. He's so disciplined. I've seen him play in person, so he definitely deserves everything he has, and I look up to him.
Me too.
There you go, guys. We hear it from the players themselves. A couple of guys maybe poking a little bit of fun at some other competitors. But I just want to point out, Aiden is literally the nicest guy, isn't he? Like, he came up on the stage on day one. He was like shaking hands. He was like, "It's so good to meet you." But a lot of respect. And one of the names that's jumping out there, Bizzle. Everyone's kind of saying Bizzle's up there as one of the best players in the world. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with that. He's definitely a very consistent performer. We always see him, him or Demo, top 10 situations. I believe he was maintaining the high ground in the last game. But definitely kind of a different environment here, international stage, different entities, different forces at work. So I definitely want to see him do well, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on him.
I'm a little bit disappointed more people didn't say themselves, to be honest.
Yeah, same.
I was expecting that. I was expecting them to maybe say me, and then I'd be like, "Guys, stop it.
I don't think
here's your money to pay off."
Going to happen.
Probably not, no. But yeah, I'm actually surprised more people aren't confident in themselves, but I think that just shows the respect they have for Bizzle.
I think it's a respect thing as well. We've seen that a lot from the interviews we've had with a lot of players, a lot of respect, but now is not the time for respect, gentlemen. Now is the time to get those elims on the board and get those victory royales. We can see here, round number 10 underway. Let's get into this one.
All right, so Speedy, I think you and I both know where our eyes are going to be locked onto. It's the players you can see with Vinny and Zexro. Are they going to switch things up, or are they going to continue to go the position they've done every single round so far? And Speedy, if they continue to do that, I'm not expecting them to win the tournament, honestly.
Absolutely. Will Vinny and Zexro switch up their landing spot? That is the $400,000 question.
Yeah. And the double trophy question, too. You can see Saf and Zay here currently ranked #2. Heading over to pretty much their similar position that they've been going for the most part here. And why not? They're not really being challenged out too much. And look at this, Vinny and Zexro. What do you make of this, Speedy?
It looks like they're aiming either for Snobby or those houses over there on the left.
If you saw on the minimap as well, there were 2 other players right next to them. I almost want to bet I know who those are going to be. Aim Hero and Fax Fox probably following them to figure out where they're going to go. I feel like you should have even dropped near your last spot. You should have dropped early on the battle bus so no one could actually see or guess what direction you were going. They might have left themselves open to being followed yet again.
What I expected to probably happen is that Aspect and Animal in Snobby Shorts, they've already won that. They've that's kind of their home already. And Vinny and Zexro trying to get an uncontested drop.
Well, one of our duos that we did see perform so well over the course of today and have their own victory out, Airwax and Nikov. They've already lost Nikov, as now Airwax is trying to fight. He does get the elimination, does take down Tixi, but he's going to be by himself now as he's looking to potentially get into these placing points because the limbs are going to be very, very tough indeed. And look at this, Snobby Shores, Zexro, and Vinny not going to be challenged out with, at the moment, there's going to be 2 players above them.
It looks like they're going to try to just split Snobby Shores here, the south side. I don't expect them to try to contest the northern team. I expect them to loot the southern side and then move over to those houses on the south and then rotate on into their usual rotation off of Viking.
All right, so they have adapted their style, so congratulations to them. I'm definitely proud to see them do that and realize it was a necessity considering how the last game did go. In the meantime, we see Nate and Funk Bomb here up against Scram and Sakoner. A couple of bottle rockets going off in the meantime. And we will have Jam Side and SSK 7 with a little bit of contention themselves, but they seem relatively safe for now. All right, so not gonna see if any action breaks down again. The further we get through the day here, Speedy, I feel like teams are gonna start changing up their style drastically. 5 games left to go, including this one. The shield, mini shield trying to be dropped there. The small shield's not actually going to land on the ground. A little bit unfortunate for them. We see Aiden and Nick Merckx as well towards tilted up against Gamers Origin, Jules, and Miz.
We actually saw Nick Merckx here not contested, but moving on over to Scram, ends up going down. And
well, we did move to Scram. Yeah, we did move to Scram. For the second he was alive, though, I know Sakoner's going to be pushing up, trying to do something about this as well. But you can pretty much predict how it's going to go in a 1v2, though I said the same thing about Aiden, who was almost able to pull that off.
So now up to FaZe, Nate to clutch this up. Actually, Funkbomb and Nate both just kind of have to slow play this and find Sakoner trying to get any little angle there. It's no need to rush this. It's a 2v1.
Yeah, exactly. Get this solid limb. Don't lose out too much HP. So you can transition a little bit further on. They're actually low on builds here. See Funkbomb is going to be completely out, but it doesn't matter. He's going to be dropped. Again, a little bit of dancing going on here for Nate. The disrespect as they get to the frag. And now Miz and Jules trying to still battle against Aiden and Nick Merckx. You see though, Miz looking to come in from the high ground, actually going to be under the staircase. Going to have to be very careful here as we now hear the trap even coming in. And that will be Jules cleaning up Nick Merckx, looking for Aiden now as they do actually have him coming in from behind. And Gamers Origin will win out the fight towards Tilted.
And Nick Merckx and Aiden go to the lobby. Better luck next time, my friends.
I can hear the sympathy in your voice to them. We have History and Fa up against Jamside and SSK 7. These actually 2 teams, relatively high placing. History and Fa from Brazil have been doing really well over the course of this tournament. They had a little bit of a rough day today as they both got eliminated earlier on to Storm Surge, and in the last game they did not make it far at all.
And they're actually getting contested here in Paradise, something we haven't seen before in the previous games. So Paradise is one of those drop spots that has a ton of loot for both of these teams. Definitely don't need to rush anything here, but SSK and Jamside deciding, hey, maybe our previous drop didn't work. We're going to try to contest here and try to figure out what we can do if we can try to clean out the duo that's currently contesting, similar to what we saw with Vinny and Zexro getting pushed off of their spawn.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, even though it did say currently ranked 28 here for FOD history, it's a close aim here of 203 meters. And looking to spam down on Vinny, put it all on Zexro's shoulders. Can they hit the shots? Can Zexro get here in time to help him out? And Vinny will have to go back to lobby, and Zexro going to be by himself now in this round.
Hero living up to the name, 203-meter knock.
This is not good. Zexro has to stay alive. If he falls now, 0 points yet again, and the 20-point difference between #1 and 2, well, they're not going to be #1 anymore, I'll tell you that. There's almost no way they can continue to be #1 if Zexro falls now.
So even though they changed their strategy, it still didn't end up working. This team was still looking for them, and they ended up getting a snipe.
The thing is, they transitioned from Snobby south, right? Why not go north? Why not go a different direction? Why not go away from the duo who's been challenging them the last 2 rounds?
So this is exactly what I was talking about. They just decided to change up their initial drop and then go on with their regular rotation off of Viking through the southern side. But I guess aim here on Fact Squad.
I mean,
we're looking out.
How often do you hit those shots at the same time, to be fair? That was a great snipe there, as you mentioned before, out of aim here, living up to that name. In the meantime, the duos we did have with History and Fa up against SSK 7. And Jamside is looking to come to a conclusion as now the Brazilian's going to get aggressive here to challenge out against them. In the meantime, BloodX and Zypan going to be up the FaZe crew here. Nate is actually low on HP.
The action does not stop here in Fatal Field.
They just ripped it out.
Smart move.
And I like
Very
that, right?
smart move.
Like, there's no point with how little games are left to be eliminated this early. Use anything you have to get away, because if you fall now into the 0 points, you can almost say goodbye to a top 10 finish.
But it does look like BloodX and Zippin are going to be hot on the trails.
Trying to do some return fire here, Nate, to prevent them from engaging on right away. Again, back to Paradise Palms here with Fa.
Kind of an interesting thing to note here, there are no third parties anywhere in the area. This is a 2v2 that's going to drag on until it's over.
Oh, or until History can hit shots like that. Does tag up SSK7, takes it down to white HP. Fa's gonna be looking to push in as well. They have to be so careful about how they do this, considering they need to push it from other angles. But I don't see Fa just yet. It's gonna be History by himself, and it looks like Fa might be getting a nice flank in here. But they're keeping them locked in. You can see the VP boys are on the back foot.
Just trying to take control here of that mid-ground of the building, trying to get lost anywhere they can, make sure that they're confusing their opponent, always moving, always trying to confuse and muffle their sounds and footsteps.
Yeah, and the thing is, you got to be very careful when shooting, because when they hear you shooting, that's their opportunity to move, right? So their footsteps won't be heard as loudly. Maybe they can sneak up on you, but the health, that's still going to say in favor here of Ints, as they're still looking somehow for this one. We do have the zone going to be in their favor too, so it's not like they need to rush this fight anytime soon. They have a lot of materials to use on top of this here, Speedy.
Yeah. Jamside and SSK just kind of using that vertical audio to their advantage, just trying to make sure that their opponents cannot find them, or at least are struggling to.
So if you're in this situation, Speed, if you're History and Fa, how do you get to the two VP guys? What's your like go-to plan?
If I'm Fa?
Yeah, if you're the Ints guys, how do you get into that?
You kind of have to work your way in very slowly and methodically. Just start wall replacing, just start trying to find, you know, where they're at, and then isolate them as best as you can. Maybe if you have some stinks or some clingers, throw those down. Some dynamite, throw that down. If you don't, then just good old-fashioned pickaxe.
Okay. Well, we did see them continuing that fight. We're going to head over to Razaru, though, and X8, the G2 guys. There's actually throwing quite a few stink bombs in here. Luckily for Moana, he's not going to get caught on, at least for now. We still have a lot of teams, though, because you can see in this general vicinity, we have about, what, 3, 4 teams, potentially 5, as we see a couple flying in as well. And then Clyde and Moana still fighting for another day. The problem is the stink bombs are still coming through, and that's a lot of damage being done here. It's going to force up the advantage, potentially.
Razaru actually ended up going down there in the elimination feed and getting sent back to the lobby.
Yeah, back to the lobby he goes, but he's going to hope his teammate X8 can do something about this. In the meantime, Safin's8 looking to flank around in this one, maybe pull off a third party, maybe pull off 3 libs if they're somehow able to do so. And X8 is just, I almost want to say, trying to hold on. If you're him now in a 1-on-2, potentially a 1-on-2-on-2, what are you looking to do?
He's looking at that volcanic vent. That's his only way to get safely into zone.
Well,
you know, there's no mobility in his inventory, no launch pads. He has 2 duos sitting underneath him, a couple of other duos rotating around, and he has a long way to go to zone. He needs to get some more sort of mobility.
We talked about Paradise Palms. We talked about how there was no one else in the vicinity, and look how quickly that's changed now with that zone coming in. We see about 3, 4 potential other teams going to be fighting this one. History and Fa have not been able to get those eliminations onto Jamside and to SSK7, so credit to SSK7 and to Jamside to stay alive. But now there's other teams here. You can see Alpha on the very high ground looking to potentially get some shots off. Smeef and Milan are victors from our last game in round 9 here as well.
So they prolonged the fight so long that, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th parties started to move on in. And this is Zenner's zone. So people are just going to start making their own homes here and building it out, farming all the buildings, getting settled in.
And composure, I think, is a big factor to talk about for both those teams, realizing, again, we don't want to drop early and just try to make sure to stay alive most importantly. That's the number 1 plan, stay alive. Number 2 plan, get these limbs. Number 3 plan, question mark, question mark, question mark. And number 4, win the game.
Absolutely. We saw Jordan and Jesse here. We saw yesterday that they do have the potential to win games, right? But after that one game, we didn't really see much more after that. So I'm really hoping that we start to see them start pull ahead and start shining.
Yeah, and the thing is,
for that OC region.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of points they have to make up for if they want to break into the higher rankings. We also have the Storm Surge active in the meantime, which is forcing a lot of these teams to play even more aggressive. At the moment, Jesse's going to be above the average. I believe Jordan is as well here. We're starting to lose out to some players. You can see in the top left-hand side of your screen. No big names just yet, but names nonetheless. Because now Zate's looking for a shot.
And this is the eastern or the western border starting to get populated here on the zone. A lot of players starting to just kind of make this their home on the eastern or the western front. The problem with that is that if you start to get a really bad circle, right, you can't really start to maneuver in.
You're like fighting from behind the whole time,
yeah.
right?
Mobility has to go down. Mobility has to be wasted. Mats have to be wasted if you don't get circle. And that's exactly what happened here. The circle ended up going over to Paradise.
Even with that snipe out of aim hero earlier on, looks like he will fall. Vinny's going to be happy about that one after being sniped out. And Fox as well. So the duo who got that elimination onto Vinny has dropped from Storm Surge. They were not able to find anyone after that elimination and weren't able to keep themselves alive.
That snipe was just not enough to meet the threshold.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate, but that's how the cookie crumbles for him. Meantime now, Indiza and Svenos able to live to fight another day. Beehive and Coffee, we haven't talked about them too much, but they are still looking decent in the overall standings. In the meantime, Jamside has been able to get the double elimination onto Fallen History. So eventually, after what seems like forever, VP guys will take down their opponents who challenged them out initially on Paradise Palms.
It was hard fought, but GG's.
GG easy. No, it was definitely not easy at all here. Bizzle and Demo very high on HP. Pretty much in center Paradise Palms as everyone else is starting to close their sights here on this lonely city. Well, not lonely anymore, I guess we should say, as Kuna and Mitro. Haven't really talked about them too much, but we did hear, even in the interviews, about who are the top players. Mitro's name was still up there quite a bit.
Absolutely a force to be reckoned with. A couple of the Atlantis players here kind of making themselves at home next to each other. Atlantis, Mitro, and Kuna next to Majin, chasing down their teammates, actually getting some tags here. Majin, no shields on him.
So Hammer 2 Hours has been able to get elimination on Tyovsky. I can still hear every time I see his name, yet. And we have the launch pad being used as 8 safe, going to rotate back into the zone.
So this is what I was talking about. When you're this far away from the zone, you need to put down those launch pads in order to get in. You have a really far rotation, especially with so many people around you.
Yeah, and well, they were able to get some distance, but they still haven't closed the distance completely, though, Speedy, so they haven't been able to actually get into the sweet spot just yet. And the zone we do have is something we've seen a couple times today. It's actually halfway over the water again, so it really eliminates a lot of the area that you can use, a lot of that real estate to your advantage to build it, to get safe in. So I'm imagining we're going to see a lot of people in Paradise Palms start to transition over towards this eastern side.
Well, this is actually a very interesting zone because the zone cannot move over the water, really. Right, the half circle will not reveal itself over the water, so you kind of have a 50% chance of getting in the half circle now if you're on land.
Tomo going to be cleaned up here as well as items, so another duo that we've seen in the top 10 start to struggle. Even though they've not actually got any victory royales, they've been consistently doing well and sneaking under the radar for most people. But they are going to be out of the fight here, and a lot of the top teams are starting to really struggle over the course of today.
Liquid Chat still alive. Milan and Smeef. Sino and Envy positioning themselves center circle there on the high ground. Kupek still in it.
Alpha, yeah, I did lose Bowman earlier on. You can see Bizzle and Demo waiting to actually make the transition across once the circle does reveal itself. And it's actually, for the majority of the part, going to be over land, but it still will be towards that eastern side. So the question now comes, if you're the one building from west to east, you have your own buildings to go back off across. So high ground to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Speedy, is going to be even more important once we get those circles moving away from that water towards the western half.
Absolutely. There is a massive mountain on the southern edge that you always want to be prepared to go over. I believe in game 1, we saw most of the lobby go down to one of those mountain zones.
Right. Well, Kripa's going to take down Dementos. And Boyer and Kripa have had some fantastic games. Villix and Kinzel still going to be alive as they were the victors of the last game of yesterday in round 7. Saipan and BloodX looking to maintain some high ground control from that mountain you were talking about. And they do have a good position here. But they have Tux and Provoked to worry about next to them. But they have a lot of potential to get some free damage off.
So this is the best position you want to be in, just laying down that AR fire from on top of the mountain. No one's going to contest you. No one's even going to look up. They're just hoping you don't look in their direction.
Not sure what happened with Beehive and Coffee, but they've actually split up. You can see on the right-hand side of your screen, Beehive on the lower part, and Coffee is actually on the upper side of that. Not sure how they got split in those kind of situations, but that's going to definitely come back to haunt them, because you would imagine one of them is going to be pushed eventually when this circle starts to move.
That tends to happen. What they eventually want to do is reunite, push towards each other, but they're probably sitting here waiting for the next circle, waiting to see, do I move over to you or do you come to me?
14 builds left for Saf. Zate's able to get elimination onto Noword, and Saf cleans it up. So that's going to be a nice little actual income for them, going up for about 14 to 64 mats to build. And they're definitely going to need it because the storm is going to start to move. And it's going to start to really cause a lot of damage here. Demo has been dropped here by Kuna. So Mitra and Kuna able to get elimination on their side.
You can just see there in the elimination feed just going off. Lots of players going down here. We just moved from 61 to 55 players in a quick second. Animal is still in there. I believe his teammate Aspect went down though.
Jamside was knocked down. You can see SSK7 trying to fight for himself. They do have 2 eliminations between the two, and SSK7 is not going to be able to res his teammate. We did hear a couple of clingers being thrown, and you can still see the stink bombs as well. And look at the position Envy has. He's going to be chucking those as far as he possibly can to get some free damage in. You can see Animal now being forced back to the storm. He's eventually got to run through this or edit his way out. To the left-hand side, Vilix and Kinzel pretty much being unharmed.
This is a great strategy that people typically use, just using those things to get as much damage in as possible, making sure that your opponents are, softening them up as you're starting to get into those later circles. You definitely want to make sure that your opponents are all one-shot if you can, so that you can just clean them up with a nice pump.
So if I'm not mistaken, Zextro has been eliminated at some point here. So Zate and Saf, I think ranked number 2 right now, are looking at this as a juicy game. If they can clean up some eliminations, get a very high place, and they will overthrow their brothers from the US, and this would be a fantastic and breakthrough game for them. Now the zone has moved towards the southeast side. The hill position we talked about before are going to be very important, especially with the zone moving that direction. You can see Izza and Camo, controller gang over here, who have really put some fear into a lot of players' eyes with how they've been able to put out some extremely high elimination numbers. Looking to still fight here to break through into that top 25.
Absolutely, 13 eliminations in game 1. And they have center circle here. They're just kind of positioned and gatekeeping, making sure that they can position themselves as good as possible for that end game.
You see Boyer really realizing there's a lot of risk to goes being used. He's trying to maintain the high ground control, trying to build up a little bit further. Ising Camo now 3 eliminations. He has a spot into Boyer, and he gets the connection on top of that. So it's a lot of damage being done, but he's being shot from above, and now he's down to 32 HP, trying to escape this one, trying to edit his way through. He's got some small shields to pop if he does need it, or if he has time, I guess more importantly, to pick it up. You can see Skix very low HP, and Cripple with 3 limbs. He does have the backup of his teammates. He has the rocket launcher as well. Actually, they both have one, and that's a lot of damage being done, trying to shoot down a couple of players, but they're not lucky this time.
Blood and Zippin just holding the high ground there. Kinzo actually ends up getting a care package.
Oh, the trap! The trap they put down there, waiting for enemies to drop on top, and works out. Crippa is going to help get the elimination onto that one. Scimitars has fallen, unfortunately, and what a play. What a read into this one, using the rocket launcher to drop people down, and another through. That's now 5 for them as they're looking to clean this game up. Look at that little trap set up perfectly where Boyer's more than happy to sit.
That was absolutely beautiful. They had the high ground, they knocked them down, they put down the trap, and they cleaned them both up.
These rocket launchers, look at what they have in their inventory, even a chug jug on
2
top
launch
of things.
pads, an RPG, 2 RPGs, each one of them with their own.
This could be the game that they're able to pull off. This could be the first time we've seen.
This is Crippa and Boyer's game if they can pull it off.
And yeah, they've not been able to get a victory out so far, but this might be theirs. This might be theirs for the taking. Saf gonna take down Little J. Mitro gonna take down Hubik. Magan just trying to fight his way back through as we have the Storm now moving towards the northern side. You can see Max Caliber off to the completely south side, just kind of being tagged up here. There we go, Jesse's still in there. Jordan, I don't think he's alive anymore as he's just trying to transition. Actually, Jordan is there, so they do have the duels from Australia still fighting. Smeef going to be on ultimate high ground at the moment, but he's going to have to transition very far. Zate has been dropped down at the moment. Saf is trying to fight his way through, and he has 2 players to get potentially pick up here, looking for the eliminations. Jordan's going to be pressured, Jordan's going to be falling, and that's going to be Jesse as well. The Australians have been knocked out. Jules cleaning up 2 quick eliminations.
Boyer here fighting for the high ground, getting his RPG, ready to knock it down.
It's so difficult to play from the higher positions. It's so difficult to deal with the explosives coming through. And what a shot out of Saf, able to return on. I'm not sure if he actually got dropped in the end anyways from the storm. You can see Seth now as well. You can see towards the left-hand side, Madsen able to get even further. Camo still alive and fighting, takes down Jules. Saf still alive, gets the elimination onto Vilix. And these rocket launchers are going to be so important here. As the zone starts to close, it moves yet again here, this time towards the western side of Paradise Palms. And Milan and Smith, who won last game, are still here fighting.
Milan actually gets knocked down off of high ground by Kripa. Kripa ends up taking the high ground. It's now Kripa and Boyer on the high ground.
He's trying to block him. Oh!
And he gets knocked down!
The stairs comes in, Milan got the redeploy to stay alive here, so that a fantastic play out of Boyer. It was great to see. It doesn't work on the end for him, but nonetheless, really showing his expertise here, especially in these later stages. 10 players left to go here, Speedy.
They were able to secure the high ground off of that, just not get the elimination. I mean, it's the best case scenario.
I mean, they still win, right? They still win because they still maintain high ground.
Have dominance here from the high ground, raining rockets in.
And the Rockets are doing some serious work. It's disrupting fights. The elimination comes through. That's now going to be 8 for them. Boyer and Kripa able to get up to 9, I think, potentially, and maybe a 10th as well. They are cleaning house here, Boyer and Kripa.
Mitro and Tux with the launch pad. Mitro, can he take the high ground?
Oh, he's trying to, and it looks like he has been able to. He's got a player above him. It's going to be Seth, though, and Madsen's going to be here to join his teammate to take this high ground away. But for how long? Because the RPGs are still in play. They get knocked down another time. You can see Seth and Madsen now up to 3 eliminations. But Boyer and Kripa, the game's been all about them. 9 elims between the two. But look at this. Now they get a 10th as well mixed into this. Tux is going to fall, unfortunately, to the storm, and these RPGs are going to be even more important here.
Boyer has 0 mats. He has to rely on that RPG. He needs to knock down these builds.
Mitro still alive from the very, very low ground, and Kripa and Boyer, who've been at the high ground for such a long time, going to be knocked down, and they might actually get a knock yet again. Here's Seth going to be able to save himself with his own catch of the building, but with 5 players left to go, you can see the chaos here from all these players. Mitro going to take down Boyer, so that's going to actually be a little bit of a pain here for Kripa. As now Mitro looking to push in. He's looking for some limbs, has 4 total across the team. A little bit now of a slower pace.
On the low ground, Kripa and Mitro.
He's got one thing to build with. He's trying to knock Kripa down, and Kripa's saying no, not today. You can see towards the back, Boyer trying to claw his way back in. That's the 5th elimination, able to help heal Mitro up a little bit further, up to 153 HP. Madsen and Seth, though, in the meantime, still have the high ground. The only 2 duos remaining, or duos that have both players up alive and running. Kripa's going to fall to the low ground, trying to take down Mitro. Mitro will fall. Kripa, though, still inside the storm, taking a lot of damage.
Ground battle. Now, it's a 2v1.
Yeah, 2v1. You shouldn't be losing this if you're LDLC. If somehow Kripa can pull this back, I'd be amazed. But he does get shot from the high side. And LDLC, Seth and Madsen will take the Victory Royale. Speedy, even though they took the Victory Royale, though, Kripa and Boyer, they have an insane kit coming into that late game. They got so many eliminations on the board, just like we saw out of Camo and Issa. And they put up some fantastic numbers.
They had the kit to win it all, but they ran out of mats, unfortunately. They maintained the high ground a little bit too long.
Yeah, they did a little bit too long there, and it did kind of cost them because they ran out of materials towards the end. But what a game as well, and considering we did have Vinny drop very early on. Zextro, we didn't see exactly what time he went out, but there was no way he was in the top 20 at least, or at least no way top 15. This is going to be a major shakeup in the standings.
Oh, it certainly is, gentlemen. I mean, it gets more and more interesting after every single game that we have. The shot that was heard around the world as well onto Vinny at the start of that game. But congratulations to Seth and Madsen taking home the Victory Royale. But so many different aspects to talk about from that game. We need to start off by, obviously, congratulations to Seth and Madsen picking up the Victory Royale. But Boyer and Kripa, I mean, 9 eliminations between them. Big points on the board. 2nd place as well for them. A huge game at this time in the tournament. That's got to be good for them.
And they were already like top 5, if I'm not mistaken. So they actually going to jump up into even a higher position. Saf and Zayt, I think, got eliminated. I want to say around like the 15th position, because we did see Zayt go down and Saf was still alive fighting. But honestly, I don't know how these standings are going to work out for them.
It's going to be interesting to watch, Speedy. I mean, 2 players who keep making it towards that end game as well, Ademo and Bizzle, but they can't quite get towards those final battles in those end zones. What do you think's not quite clicking for those guys at the moment?
Unfortunately, I'm not quite able to make that assessment, just because
that's fair.
You know, they do consistently make it to end game, but once those moving circles start to happen, they kind of get lost in the sauce, and we don't really ever see them, you know, in the kill or the elimination feed or in, you know, a high ground position. They're just kind of down there in the mess.
Can I jump in on that really quickly, the high ground position? Because when we did see them performing well yesterday was when they were able to transition easily from the low ground to the high ground with like a rift to go. They had the read on the timing of when to get up there. This time you saw Mitro try to take high ground, but the LDLC boys, they took it from him immediately, built right on top of him to lock him in, and then they played that to the very end for the victory.
Okay, guys, well, I think it's time to hear from our winners of that last game. Adam's with them down on the floor right now.
I certainly am, Mark. Très bien, monsieur. C'est magnifique. See, my French is coming in. It's coming into action now. Guys, Seth and Madsen, our Game 10 winners. Guys, I've got to ask you, what was it like to play in that? It looked like chaos. How did it feel?
Well, we were quite lucky because we got 2 rifts when we killed the TSM guys. So we are quite thankful for them. So we used them well, and we took our pad that we put on the floor at the beginning. So it made us take the high ground, and we won.
Are you looking at the leaderboard now a lot as well? Obviously, points are changing. Vinny and Zexro this morning were leaders, and things are changing a lot now. Are you keeping like a tally of what's happening every game?
Well, just playing our game, and we're looking at the leaderboard every time. But we have still 4 more games left, I think. So nothing is done, and we can still go at the top.
I've asked some players as well earlier on today about what you did last night, going back to your hotel. Did you watch VODs? Did you watch replays of your performance yesterday and change things today?
Well, we watch a little bit of replays, but we play a lot in a day, so we try to take a break from the game and just chill.
And lastly, of course, being French, you have lots of French fans watching as well. Would you like to share something with your French fans in your native language?
Merci à tous pour le soutien, franchement ça fait plaisir. Quand on rentre, on s'attend pas à avoir autant de messages et franchement merci beaucoup.
Merci, monsieur. Give it up, your Game 10 winners! Madsen and Seth there. Well done, gentlemen. Best of luck with the rest of the competition. Once again, amazing Game 10. Only a few to go, 4 to go. Mark, back to you guys.
Thank you, Adam. Congratulations to Seth and Madsen there. The French duo coming out hot, Jason.
Yeah, they did. And you saw in the interview, they said they picked up the 2 Rift to goes, and they were kind of not gifted, but they were able to eliminate the TSM boys to pick it up. Something I want to transition off that, though, in the same kind of sense is we saw Boyer and Crypt. They had 2 RPGs. They had 2 launch pads. They had so much in their inventory. I don't need to be too critical on them, but was that a game they should win in that situation with that kind of inventory? Or do you feel like late game, even the best inventories doesn't really take into account the craziness that happens?
They had the means to retake high ground by any measure. They had the mobility. They had the RPGs to knock down high ground. They retook it a couple of times. They lost it once or twice. But I think what cost them the game is they retook it a little bit too early, ran out of mats, had to drop down. And after that, it was GG.
That's where I guess Seth and Madsen really chimed in to use the Rift to Ghost to escape and take it
I mean,
themselves.
it was something that we were talking about yesterday is, the importance of not only holding the high ground towards the end game, but the timing of when you take high ground. And we just saw it in effect there. If you take it at the wrong time, you go a little bit too early, mats becomes an issue, and to hold down that high ground does become a problem. But now look at these duo stand-ins. Oh my word. Let me do the math. 2 points is what separates our first and second place teams. It could not be tighter. Just 63 points separating our top 5 now. We've seen that picked up in 1 game.
That's honestly, the thing is, look at Aeroax and Nikov. To me, that's the big story. Yes, Vinny and Zexro, they've had a rough 2 games, but these 2 players kind of came out of nowhere. Not really in contention. I remember they started off yesterday, and they had 5 points after 2 games, and yet they've been able to make themselves into the top 4 position now. That's fantastic.
Demo and Bizzle actually creeping up on the leaderboard. So we've mentioned before they weren't performing, in terms of top 5s, but they're still consistent, and that's being rewarded.
And Camo and Issa as well, we talked about them. They're really performing well today. You see, they shot up the leaderboards as well. Provoked and Tux kind of slipping down a little bit, but I mean, you can still see how tight every single points gap is between all these teams and their surrounding duos that are around them. So we talked about how things have been changing up and how they're going to continue to change up. Those gaps keep closing. However, one thing I do want to point out is the fact that for all of the bad games, we should say, or unfortunate games that the guys who are on top at the moment, Vinny and Zexro are having, they are still holding down that top spot. And, you have to expect at some point they are going to have a successful game.
I mean, let's be fair to them. Even though they've had a rough couple of games, they've still been able to maintain that kind of position with 2 rough games. I mean, we saw in the solos tournament for the Polish tournament, the solo tournament for the Polish edition, what happened with just 1 bad game can drop you out of contention. But they've been able to do it twice because that really shows the lead and the consistency they've been playing with.
Them having rough games is kind of an understatement. I think the only reason right now that they're still in the top 5 is because they accrued such a massive lead yesterday, and they're kind of leaning back on that. the last 3 games have not been promising in terms of moving up in terms of points, but they definitely need to reevaluate what they're doing.
Can I shout out one more duo real quick?
Very quickly.
Okay, Motor and Eric.
Yes.
First tournament here for Eric Triceps, and they're actually in 25th place, so credit to them. I know they had really rough games. I think the first 3 or 4, they really struggled, but they're making their way up.
They are, and obviously everyone performing incredibly well today. It's set up beautifully. I keep saying it at the end of every single segment here, but it's getting truer and truer as the games get fewer and fewer. We're going to go for another break now. When we get back, though, we've got more action coming your way.